Finding free or close to free equipment to fix and sell is very rewarding. It keeps you busy, and depending upon what kind of equipment you find, it can also be very challenging and somewhat fun. But is there another reason why we do this hobby? Well, as you might have guessed, you can also make a decent living too. That's right, we're going to be talking about the money you can make and unfortunately lose doing this hobby. If you told me years ago that I could make good money fixing small engines, I would not have believed you. I was simply not aware of how important it was to have good working equipment until I got a lot older. And why is that? Well, think about it. How many machines would you have to fix to make a good living? Are you talking about a couple a week, maybe a dozen, or how about 100 a month? Think about it this way. How many machines do you have? Then consider what your neighbors have, then increase that number by how many homes or properties are in your city. I don't know if you ever gave it enough thought, but that's a lot of machines, all of which need to work. But why do they need to work? Well, according to most city ordinances, properties and their boundaries need to be maintained to a certain standard. And to do that, you're going to need to have a good working mower, if not a string trimmer, and possibly a leaf blower. Although if you ever take a look, some yards don't ever seem to get edged, and also a good broom works as well. But if for some reason your equipment fails and your grass gets really tall, your neighbors will let you know about it, and the city will do what it does best. So we've just established that there's a lot of equipment out there that could need fixing. But if everyone maintained them like they should, then they would keep running and run well too. However, you already know that's not going to happen. Many of those machines will be neglected, maybe on purpose, but some will be on accident. Now, either way, without proper care and maintenance, some of those machines will have problems and not run well or not even start at all. That's when these machines will need to be repaired or serviced so they'll work again. Now, you could take them to a repair shop, or you'll pay a premium to have a specialist fix it. Or you can do the next best thing, which is to find a hobbyist or someone who knows how to work on them and have them fix it for a better price. Let me put it another way. You're not trying to find the person who's going to do it for the lowest price, but instead, just find someone who's not going to overcharge you in comparison to a repair shop. Otherwise, what's the point in asking someone else to do it if you're willing to pay a lot for labor? This is when people like myself are willing to work on these machines and not charge you an arm and a leg for it. At this point, you've got to be asking yourself, how much do I charge for the work I do? And the answer may not be what you'd expect. Now, before I tell you how I charge people, you've got to understand one thing, that my situation will not be like yours. Probably not. So the way I charge for my work is a flat rate based on its size, and then I add any parts that need to be replaced. Now, for example, if you bring me a push lawnmower, it's automatically $60 to get it running, not including any other parts. I do have to mention that this is typically for a lawnmower that won't start or one that needs its yearly service. But if you have a specific problem, say with the recoil or the pull rope, you can always adjust the pricing for doing only what's needed. I'm not a monster, so of course if you don't want extra work done, then it won't get done unless I give it to you for free. So have I ever done work for free? Well, the answer is yes, I have, but it's very rare and it's based on the situation. Now the reason why is because giving away free work is a good way to go belly up, so I wouldn't recommend it. But what if I got something in that was a lot bigger, say a zero turn or a riding mower? What then? Well, that's easy. The base price goes up. I know it sounds like I'm taking advantage of the people with larger machines, but I assure you that's not the case. Larger machines can take a lot more time and definitely more floor space that could be used for several smaller items. That's the reason for the price difference. Now don't worry, the price isn't that much more, but because of the complexity of larger machines, the prices are extremely flexible. But it's really not that much of an issue since I typically work on the larger machines on site. However, you'll then have to factor in more time to do the job. But as I mentioned before, I don't charge by the hour. Instead, I'm charging for the time away from my home. But I am going to let you know right now, I don't like working away from home, and the reason is because it's extremely inconvenient. And if you haven't realized it by now, time is something that you can't get back, so make sure you use it wisely. Otherwise, make sure that you charge good money for your time, and you're going to find out who can afford it and who can't. So I have been told that I'm undercharging for my services, and to be honest, they are correct, but that's done on purpose. So if my time is worth so much, why do I charge so little? Well, it depends on other factors that might be unique to myself. The biggest factors are of course other streams of income, your debt, and any other investments you might have. If you own your home and are getting dividends from investments, then you don't have to charge all that much. However, if you're still paying a mortgage and also have to work for other people at an hourly rate, things will be a lot more complicated. So how much should you charge for your time if you have so little time to give since you're still working? Well, according to what I just explained, you should be charging a really high rate to make up for the time you're not enjoying while off work. However, there is a big problem. The more you charge, the less work you're going to get in comparison to a person who's charging less. So what are you supposed to do then? Charge less? Well, that's a tough choice you're going to have to make yourself. So let's say you get your pricing set and you're ready to start fixing stuff. What do you do next? Well, this is when you need to decide on a business model. Are you going to fix stuff for other people or get stuff to fix and sell yourself? But what about the pros and cons of either choice? Well, this is when things get complicated. If you're fixing stuff for other people, you get paid for your time and efforts without dealing with storage problems. And if you couldn't guess, it's a massive problem when getting stuff for yourself to fix because space is always limited. Another problem with fixing customers' machines is unfortunately dealing with the customers. If you like working alone and don't care to talk to other people, you could have a tough time dealing with them. And if that is you, then you might be better off finding and fixing stuff and selling what you fix. But then again, you have to store the stuff you fix until you sell it, but is this a real problem? Well, that depends, but generally speaking, to make good money, you'll need to fix a lot of equipment. Now, how many will depend on what you can find and how fast you can sell them. But what happens most times is that you'll have to have more machines than you can store, and this is when Big Brother could step in. Now, depending on the area you live in, if you try to run a small engine repair business from your house, you could get into trouble. Believe it or not, you do not have the right to run such a business in a residential area. Now, this information is quite the shock to most who try to do this kind of hobby and then try to make it legitimate. What will happen is that you'll have to move your business to a business district in a garage, which will cost you rent, insurance, and utilities. But doing this could cause you to go from 30 repairs a month to a staggering 100 repairs, which can be tough. And if you can't afford that amount of time because of your main job, it could mean a huge loss of money, not to mention time. But let's say you can't move your small engine business to a garage, it's just not in the budget. Well, in that case, get ready to be fined by the city, and I hate to tell you what it is, but from what I've heard, it's a lot. So this is the case when it comes to repairing other people's machines, and that's because you're going to be seen as a small engine repair shop. But what about fixing stuff that you find and eventually sell? Is that considered a business? Well, it could be, but since you're doing it for yourself and not for a customer, it falls in a different category. 1, there are no customers dropping off or picking up equipment, and 2, indulging in your hobby of restoring lawn equipment. The selling is something that's done once you get done using them for their intended purpose and are no longer useful to you. I don't want to dive too far into the legal part much more, but it's up to you how you approach this hobby. You can always fix a friend's, family members, or co-workers' machines as a favor, and there's no way for it to be seen as a business, so it's still possible to indulge in your hobby. Or there's always the possibility that you could fix the machines as part of a trade agreement where they have a service they're willing to offer for yours. Now, of course, you're not going to make any money in that agreement, but it's still a workaround for any legal concerns. I hate to say it, but doing this for fun was a lot easier to deal with. But the moment money gets involved, someone's there to make sure that fun becomes less fun and more hassle. So what would I do then? Well, your best bet is to take the second option, where you're getting stuff to fix for yourself and sell once you're done restoring them. There's very little hassle involved, at least right now, but who knows what'll happen in the future. It was the same years ago when sales tax for online purchases wasn't a thing until it was. The same could happen for online sales, especially when you're talking about an app that's responsible for $1 billion in sales every year. I'm quite sure there's already been some discussion about taking advantage of this market, but luckily nothing's been done about it, at least not yet. So what happens when you get a service call from someone you've never met before? Would that constitute a business agreement? It is quite possible, but this is when you have to make a choice as to how you charge for your work. I can't tell you what to do because I don't want to get involved in your arrangement, but just make it clear that you're helping them get their equipment running again and that they're responsible for paying for parts. Now, this is not the best business model, however, it does free you from most liabilities, but then again, this is just a hobby. Don't forget the definition of a hobby, which is an activity done in one's leisure time for pleasure. So if I were you, I would be careful turning what used to be something fun and enjoyable to something stressful and troublesome. I know I just got done explaining how a hobby could be turned into something financially rewarding, but as with most things, money has a way of turning things into something else. But if all possible, I would still like to keep this hobby as widespread as possible since I find it so enjoyable. Here's my advice. Make a choice in how you want to approach this hobby, and if you decide to try and make money with it, so be it. Just be aware that certain aspects of it can ruin it for you if you're not careful. I am not a lawyer, but I have my opinions on how I'd go about it, and that's what I just shared with you today. But if you have more questions on stuff I didn't address today, you're more than welcome to ask me in the comments or by email if you want some privacy. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.